Hello students, today we are going to see three games. One game actually. The first game is between Rubinstein and Nimzowitsch from 1928. Let's start this amazing masterpiece of Rubinstein. Game started d4, knight f6. Rubinstein white, Nimzowitsch black, c4, e6. Nimzowitsch is going for, of course, his defense. Nimzowitsch defense. Knight c3, bishop b4, queen c2. Idea of this move is that when you take with bishop into c3, I'll take with queen into c3, not spoiling my pawn structure. d6, e3. Here this queen c2 move leaves the d4 pawn unprotected, so the main line in the theory are d5 and c5. But this is obviously 1928, so theory is not that developed. So d6, c3, c5, bishop d3, knight c6, knight e2, e5, a questionable move. e5, why? Because there are two options. One is d5, gaining space in the center, and second is d into e5, d into e5, and now your d5 square is pretty weak. Rubinstein followed with the first option, d5, gaining a space advantage, bishop into c3 check, queen into c3. Black is not allowing you to take comfortably with knight into c3 because knight d4 and you lose your two bishop pair. That's not in our plan. So that's why queen into c3. If black played knight e7, black more or less now or then has to take on c3 because this b4 bishop is a very bad bishop. It is blocked by 3 of pawns. The c5, d6, c5, 3 of dark pawns are not allowing this b4 bishop activity. That's why this is a bad bishop. All the center pawns are on its color, black center pawns. So that's why he should exchange this bishop. Bishop into c3, queen into c3, and now knight e7. Now was played queen to c2. Very deep move. You'll understand the reason why later. Short castle. Now the main plan of black in these positions is to play knight e8 h5 or knight e8 f5 or knight h5 f5. But here's the case. He can't play f5 because to play f5 you have to move this knight, and to move this knight now is the thing. Queen c2 was played because he wants to control that h7's pressure that h7 pot. So now black can't play knight h5, knight d7 or knight e8 because bishop into h7 check is coming. That's the deep idea. That's called prophylaxis. We'll speak about that later. Now knight g6. Knight to g3. Now after knight g6, black is now threatening to play knight h5 f5 or knight e8 f5. That's why knight g3 was played. Now three pieces are comfortably controlling f5. Now there's no way black can plan this. So black goes away from this plan and plays rook e8. Now in the positions of this, the main plan of white is that here this is like a king's Indian defense, but thing is that black has no g7 bishop, fiancé to 1. In king's Indian, white is scared of playing f4 because when we play f4 the g7 bishop becomes all furious, just a dragon. But here there is no e7 bishop, so our plan is to play f4 use our 2 bishop pair and just bombard the opponent. So after rook e8 was played bishop d2. Now why not f4? Well, if you play f4, that's what rook e8's plan is. We play e into f4, e into f4, and now knight to g4. And now black has immense activity, and now there are 3 threats lingering in the position. First is, see now, this is, engine tells this is good for black, white, but there are many threats here. First of all, the first threat is to at some time play knight e3 and trade this bishop. Positional one. Second threat is most dangerous, to play queen h4 attacking the s2 pawn, and white has to give his precious s2 pawn and then continue, like I'll show you that. And third threat is typical tactic, knight into s2, king into s2, queen h4 check, and we win. Let me show. So let's say a3. First threat is knight e3. Second threat is queen h4, most dangerous, h3, queen into g3, h into g4, bishop into g4, and now we are pawn off with an attack. This is easily winning. Very big advantage. Third threat is knight into h2, typical tactic, king into h2, queen h4 check, king g1, queen into g3, and same position without the bishop on g4, also an extra pawn and a big advantage promised for black. Third threat is more dangerous, most dangerous, of queen h4, and then you are just totally winning. So that's why f4 doesn't work. I mean, it can work, but it's better to not allow your opponent any counterplay in such a good position with a space advantage. That is one of the things that makes these players away from amateurs. So bishop d2, a6. Now white is just like this, but before bishop d2, white did something better. Bishop d2 sounds like a promising alternative, but white did f3, nice move. Now f3 just controls all the square, controls e4, controls g4, and this knight is just limited. Now white will start his plan of action. Now bishop d7 was played, bishop d2, developing the bishop. Now a6, threatening b5. Now now it's clear that black wants to march on the queen side, because on king side his plan is at a halt because too many pieces are there. But now the plan comes to the rescue. Now white's plan is of f4, but this knight comes to g4 is very annoying for us. We play h3. Now knight g4 is forever prohibited of f4. So b5. Now planning b into c4, weakening the d5 pawn. So b3, logical move. And now queen b6. Black is getting everything in the path of this f4 move. Why am I saying this? Now it may seem you can play f4, but e into f4, e into f4, and now knight into d5 tactic. Now this doesn't work because of bishop into g6, but like Rubinstein's it's a headache every time to calculate this knight into d5 motif. So that's why Rubinstein just did king to h2, simple move. Now king to h2, and now no knight into d5 tactic, and now we are good. a5, and now black's plan is to play a4, then create some weaknesses on the queen side, logical move. And now what will you play? It was played rook a b1, the nice move, and now black's plan is suddenly prohibited. b4 was played, which is a mistake. So what is the best move? a4 is best. It may seem that a4 is not possible because of b into a4, but now b4, and after taking the a4 pawn, the queenside counterplay continues. But a4 Rubinstein would have played b4, and now after trading all four pawns like cb4 and bishop b4, like this, after trading all four pawns, the d6 pawn would become a weakness, and white's double bishop advantage will turn to prosper. But anyway, this was the best possible move. And now b4 weakens the tides even more. Now it may seem logical, so that after b4 we are planning a4 and then we'll break through, but there's nothing like this. After b4, white was tension free, like it's now no knight g4, no knight into d5, everything is prevented, and now comes f4. The plan starts to prosper. E into f4, e into f4. Now it was played knight to f8. Now let me tell you why. Now if you play a4, I play f5. Now you may be like, what? f5? Why knight e5? But then bishop g5, very annoying move. And now you can't get your knight off this square. If you would ignore it, like something like ab3, and some move is some trash move you do, like rook a7, let's say. I am just showing you by example. Bishop into f6, e into f6, knight h5, queen d8, queen f2, and now queen g3 check and mate is coming. Knight into d3 doesn't matter. Queen g3 check, king f8, queen g7 is just mate. I mean, not now. I mean, it is just mate. King e7 can be played, but queen into f6 check, king f8, queen g7, or queen h8, king e7, and then f6, nice mate with the pawn. So that's why a4 is not working, because of this bishop g5 motive. That's why it was played knight to f8. Now what if you play h6? Well, h6, the plan is same, but now the execution is not. Bishop into g6 is the thing, and now you lose a pawn. That's why knight f8 is good, preventing this march. So now bishop c1. Oops, I was not going to reveal this. Okay, think like you've seen nothing, and pause the video and think. Don't say bishop c1 after seeing this move, okay? Pause the video and think. This is important moment. I just clicked the move. So now slid bishop to c1. I just clicked. Why bishop to c1? Well, bishop to c1, it's the maneuver. White is maneuvering this bad bishop to a good square on b2. Well, it will point lasers on the black king on this a1 to h8 monster diagonal. Bishop c1, queen to d8, ultra tricky move. Now I bet you've seen bishop c1, so you'll say bishop b2 after seeing the plan. But chess is not that easy, my friends. Queen f2 was played. Now what if bishop to b2? Now bishop to b2 thing is that knight to g4 check comes, and all of a sudden black is good in this position. All of a sudden it's an equal. Before it was a plus 1.5, now it's an equal, all because of this silly mistake bishop to b2. Why? Knight g4 check, nice move, h into g4. If you don't recline, I'll play knight e3 and fork your queen and rook. That's why h into g4, queen h4 check, the same motive. King g1, queen into g3, and now I'll take this g4 pawn, then I have a strong attack, and at least I'll draw in this position. At least there's a draw. So queen f2. Now no knight g4 because h into g4, queen h4, and the knight is protected. Like let's say a4, bishop b2 was played in the game, and now if knight g4, then I play h into g4, queen h4, and there's no queen into g3. So that's why this is not it. So now a into b3, a into b3. First, after bishop d2, before a into b3 was played, knight g6 again. Now the bishop is not on this c1 to h6 diagonal, so bishop g5 is not possible after f5. But we don't have a need now to play f5. We don't need. Rook b d1. Now it was an preparatory move in advance, prophylaxis in advance. If now like a into b3, a into b3, rook a2, if you play, then it comes, then rook a2 may seem that bishop into f6 is winning for white, but black is holding very concretely. Now rook into f2 is coming, bishop into d8, rook into f1 is coming, and now your rook is just trapped. So that's why this is not good. So now this position is reached, and now white doesn't need to do this, but even if you do this, your position is good. 1.3 here. So but you need not do this, you can just continue the game, and rook f1 is tricky. Now if you play something like knight g6, I'll play bishop into f2, bishop into f6, rook into f2, bishop into d8, now rook into d8, and now knight e2, and your rook is just trapped. You have to give the exchange. So but rook b d1, Rubinstein wants no complications. A into b3, a into b3, rook a2 is met by bishop to b1. So no tension of that. Just awesome. Doing the job and preventing the opponent's job. That's the art to learn from this positional top players. So after rook b d1 was played, rook first a into b3, a into b3, and now rook a7. Thinking is sometime it would need help on where is it? Yeah, sometime queen a8 can come pressuring along this a file, or rook sometime the rook can come to e file to help the other rook. But after rook a7, the rook moves from the a file, so rook moves from the 8th rank, so rook d1. White seizes the movement to control the important e file. Now rook into e1, rook into e1, and now was played what? Okay, so now it's a bad position for black, but he played knight f8 back. Why is the question, and we'll reveal it soon. So now thing is that white's threat is to play bishop into f6, queen into f6, knight e4. Let's say black plays something like rook b7, bishop into f6, queen into f6, knight e4. And now your d6 pawn is gone because queen e7 is met by knight into c5, and also the b7 rook is gone. Just for illustration, nothing serious. So rook into, that is the threat, that's why knight f8. But now pause the video and think, what should we play now? I bet most of you, after seeing the whole game, would have played f5, because f5 is such obvious. Knight, queen f4, d6 pawn is hanging, knight f8 is just killed. There's no way black survives this, and yeah, that's good. f5 is also suggested by the engine, but Rubinstein did was stronger than f5. He has such a positional understanding. He played bishop into f6. I think the brilliant move is too much, but still super strong move, brilliant. Now why? See, this is concrete. Now we don't need to give our bishop pair every time we get these type of exchanges, but Rubinstein had calculated this. Now queen to f6, knight e4, and thing is that this d6 pawn is very loose here. So knight e4, queen h6, and now f5. Now f8, knight is killed, plus g4 plus f6 is coming, after d6 will be hanging. So f5 was played, rook a3, attacking the b3 pawn, rook b1. It may seem ugly, but don't worry, it's just temporary. Rook a6, defending the d6 pawn on need. F6, after f6 the d6 pawn will hang. But now Rubinstein noticed that this queen is very loose here. Only if I play something like g4, g5, and only square is h5, but bishop e2 is trapped. So he played g4. Now threat is something like, if you play rook b6, g5, queen h5, bishop e2, and now it's trapped. g4, f6 was played, and after f6 was played, king to g3. Now h4, g5 is the threat. He is not stopping at his plan. Now bishop to c8. Now king g3, h4, g5 plan, bishop c8. Weird move, but knight d7, knight e5 is coming, and if you play h4, g5, then the queen will escape by h5, e8 route. So that's why queen e2. Oops, not queen e2. First rook e1, so that after knight d7 we could carry out the tactic. Yes, knight into d6, rook into d6, rook e1, rook e8 check, and I take your bishop. So that's why it doesn't work, and it should not. So after rook e1, knight d7 is not played, bishop b7 is played, and after bishop b7 comes, yes, h4 g5, no, queen e2. Now h4 g5 is threat, and now the queen is trapped. Knight d7, threatening knight d5. Now no bishop on b7, but what if there was no knight on e4? What will you play? Queen e8 check? Yes. So what will you play now? Knight into d6, good move. And now it's over. So rook into d6, queen e8 check, knight f8, rook e7. Now queen f7 check, queen into f8 mate is threat. So now g6, only move. Queen f7 check, king h8, rook e8. Of course not rook into b7, queen e3 check, and you allow lots of checks. Rook e8, rook d8, last trick. Now queen into f6 was played. If rook into d8, queen e3 with perpetual check. Am I right? Yes, perpetual check. Be careful, you can mess up in the last movement. Queen into f6 check, king g8, queen e6 check, king g7, f6 check, and now resignation. What an amazing game. What are the takeaways from this game? Okay, the takeaway is that you have to see with your Two eyes. What are the threats of opponent on each move? Prophylaxis. I have covered it in a video before. You have to ask the golden question. What does my opponent want? Or what is my opponent's next move? What is my opponent's next move? Slash plan. What does my opponent want? These are the questions of prophylaxis. When you ask these, you will not stumble across these bishop b2, knight g4. So let's review this game. All started from this f3, preventing knight g4. Then this h3 started the plan. So now b3, king h2. Every move was just prophylaxis. b4, now f4, takes, knight f8, bishop c1, remaneuvering, queen f2, prophylaxis against knight g4, bishop b2, rook bd1, prophylaxis against this a into b3, a into b3, rook a2. Now rook d1, takes, knight f8, bishop into f6, this mind-blowing move. One advanced club player was offered this position and he said 10 moves, but none of them was correct. This understanding we mortals cannot get it. Very, very rare understanding of chess by Rubinstein. Bishop into f6, queen into f6, knight e4, and now f5. And now just the finishing was awesome. He didn't even give his opponent a single chance. What an amazing game of Rubinstein. So, and also prophylaxis is very important in chess. Plus when you have space advantage, you should carefully check. And when you have two bishops, opening the position is good for the side with the two bishops. And when you have space advantage, you have to play it carefully, not stumbling in opponent's tricks. And also we saw a very important rule. Chess rules are not universal, because no chess rule is universal. Instead of all the rules you need to know, I mean illegal rules, something like that, but chess rules, yeah, like you should like for attacking you should have a majority of pieces. Your pawn structure should be good always. These rules are not universal. There are exceptions, and this was one of them. You should not give your bishop pair needlessly in a position unless it's concrete. That's the case. It was concrete in this game. That's why he gave the bishop pair. So this was the amazing game. I hope you liked it. Don't forget to hit the bell icon. Thank you.